Hey everybody, this is Peter Shawwalker from Nearshore Cyber. Welcome to the Queer in Cyber podcast. Currently on YouTube because it's cheaper and easier. But we promise we'll get into a podcast for real. Topic this time: getting jobs, getting people, hiring both sides of the equation. This is going to be, I think, from two perspectives. One is the Ian Peter perspective. We hire a lot of people. We also do a lot of looking for work, but we're very much in the hiring seat. And Anna, Amber, and Ray are kind of on the earlier side of it, and we'll be shifting over to our side as the years and decades grind on. We have 5 things we want to cover this time. Let's go to the first one. So, Anna, let's take turns reading, so this feels collaborative. Anna, why don't you take the first one?
Sure. How can I write a job description that doesn't push minorities in tech and cyber away?
I mean, I'll jump in with something that I still see in job descriptions, which is, people writing the job descriptions maybe have experience, maybe they don't, but there's a lot of veiled references to certain things. Like a company might say, you must be available, blah, blah, hours or something. And they're pushing away people with children, or they're pushing away people who need more flexibility because they're looking after their parents. And then also it sends a signal in my mind to women and to minorities that, oh, well, you really have to be someone who's only working and not doing anything else in your life. And you need to be this particular kind of person. And I think the first thing you have to ask yourself with a job description is there something in here that's a coded way of excluding? Like deliberately or semi-deliberately, they don't realize they're doing it, but they're doing it.
Well, there's some parts of the world where it's expected. This is not in the United States. I don't know about Canada. Where it's expected that your resume is going to say marital status. It's going to say children, things like that. I don't know. I mean, there are a couple. There's the kind of like frat boy culture where with terms like work hard, play hard,
right?
Which is almost always code for alcoholism. And a sober alcoholic, I look at that when I walk away.
I'm going to jump in and just say, this, we're talking about coded stuff. There are still job descriptions out there for jobs that are gendered. I have seen things posted that say, we are looking for a network and security analyst. In this role, he will. We're still dealing with that level of
I didn't even think
exclusion.
Of that. Mm-hmm.
That still exists. It's not even thinly veiled or coded. They're just out there.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I didn't even think of that. I have worked only at where I've been hiring. I've worked at organizations that strove to not do that.
Well, can I just be venturous?
Yeah, by all means, go ahead.
Can I just be venturous here and even say that minorities in general, at least from the perspective in the Hispanic community, right? I haven't seen a big push in tech and cyber just because we're not aware, right? It goes back to, I think I mentioned this in the last episode. I'm sorry, let me take that back. When Hispanics, for the most part, think of cyber, we think of hacking away with our hoodie and knowing how to code. We don't do that, right? There's more to it. And I have seen some job descriptions that need coding. And there's roles that you, in cyber, for a security operations center analyst, you don't necessarily need to know how to code. But seeing that you're required to at least be knowledgeable with Python, with Ruby, that's going to push people away. Not to mention the name of the position, right? If you have engineering versus analyst, that by default is going to say you need an engineering degree. I'm not even going to apply.
Yeah, well, there are 2 issues here that I see. One is that the specifications that recruiters are given and that hiring managers are supposed to write are bad. And when the description is bad and there's a lack of understanding of what's actually required to do the job, what do? You hire people like you, because you can at least then spare yourself the embarrassment of not having done the requirements analysis up front, understanding what the job is. I mean, I do a lot of SOC assessments, right? And most of that is role definition and organizational definition, so that people understand, like, what is the job? And if you don't know that, you're just going to hire people like you. So if I weren't as aware, I would hire white dudes with kids who are middle-aged, who like have a thing for Mexico, right? I would hire people who have that experience. I would discriminate in that way. And that's just natural. That's what people do when they're a little bit nervous about not really having done their jobs right. The other thing is that I think that, I hate the term DEI. For one thing, nobody gets the E, but let's just say DEI. Doing it right requires leaning into it and being, I also hate the term proactive, but I'm going to have to use it here, proactive, and being out front about your acceptance of an appreciation for diversity, not just like the section at the bottom, which supposedly no one ever sees. Like, if you're just sticking to the legal requirements, then everything else is a blow off.
So we have a question that's really kind of related to that I want us to get to, Peter, but did we have any other comments about this topic in particular? You know, I think we need to be considerate of gender and how things are phrased. Coding, Ian was saying. I think it's important. I like trying to avoid things like work hard, play hard. That very coded. We go out to the bar and drink a lot. I mean, there's a huge movement in cyber of individuals who have stopped drinking. There's a group called Sober in Cyber. There's a lot of that out there now. So I think it's really important when thinking about this to be mindful of that as well, for sure. But did we have any other thoughts on this one?
I'll second what you said. Think. Like, actually think when you write your job description, what you're actually communicating. And have other people read it. If you've got diverse people on your team, great, have them read the job description and tell you how they feel about it. If your team is not diverse, well, you've got a problem, because in security, as we said in a previous podcast, diversity in a general sense and neurodiversity and various other things are useful, but also have people read the job description who are not straight white boys, and also have them read it.
But sometimes, sometimes we're not even conscious at a higher level of those things that are coded, right? What Amber just said about he will X, Y, or Z, we've been so programmed to just get past it without knowing that me reading he will X, Y, or Z, I'm not even going to apply it. And it's something behind our brains. We have to make it conscious, right? So let's make sure, right, if we're writing those job descriptions, that we're able to make those things conscious, right? Even if we're sharing it with a diverse panel, sometimes bringing that attention to those things. Do you see any gender specific words? Do you see any things that are not relevant to the role that are listed there just because it's a would like, right? So asking the questions to someone external so they're conscious as well.
They have to understand what the purpose is and encouraged to state the truth. Like, I mean, it's dangerous for me to say, well, what about the queer people? What about the? I mean, if I'm given a job description, I'm asked to review it for diversity and inclusion, and I actually raise something, I'm putting myself at risk. Now, I can handle that risk, right? But most people can't, and so they don't. They just keep quiet. I've been in meetings where like things were said that were definitely not appropriate, and the people that were hurt by them were afraid to stand up for themselves. And I will wrap this particular side up by saying this. That's what this is about. That's one of the purposes of this project, is to give people the courage to stand up and say, There's something in there that we need to talk about. It's going to be painful for all of us, but it's the right thing to do. Let's go to the next one.
Great point. I actually have to make sure that I can go backwards here, because we actually missed the first one because it skipped it. There we go.
We must never go backwards. Ever.
I know, but this is great because this was actually something that you were just talking about, Peter. What questions can I ask as a hiring manager? We put DEI in the question, and you were just talking about how DEI is sort of on its way in and out here, right? But just to bring awareness to diversity, to bring awareness to when we're managers, obviously there's often a people team that is really putting together these job posts and doing these initial interviews. So what types of things can we ask or convey to that recruiter or whomever we're working with? And I think this is a great one for you, Peter, because you're in this space, you're doing recruitment, you're out there doing the thing. So what types of things do people say to you that let you know that like they've got a clue?
The ones that don't come to me. There are people who don't like brown people. I don't deal with them. There are people who, one of the nice things about this podcast YouTube channel thing is it's a filter for bigots. And I don't want to deal with those people, and I don't want to hear from them. Now, there are people who really want to help and want to understand. Those are the folks I'm really interested in. And we've seen them. We've seen some of that in our Discord. It's great, right? But I think there's working on this stuff at the community level so that we can change the whole milieu. Now, what do you do if you are a candidate and you need a job and you're in an interview with a hiring manager or a recruiter? I don't know that there's anything you can do in that case, except like if you're in high demand. Almost no one is right now. There's some exceptions, but right now people are just trying to get jobs so they can like pay rent, put food on the table. But if you're not in the position, what I would suggest is say, who on your executive team is a person of color or queer or such and such? Like, and if it's you, like refer to your class, right? So if you're, in my case, I might say like, are there queer people on the executive team? Like, I don't care about your DEI program, right? Those are pinkwashing, brownwashing, blackwashing affairs for the most part. I want to know what the result is. You might, I don't know. I haven't really thought through this one a lot because my approach is like build community, destigmatize, and then we figure out where to go from there. But you look like you want to say something.
Well, I was going to amplify some of what you said. When I was at the Broad Institute, a woman who, neither of us work there anymore, but a woman who was definitely an ally and was an executive came to me, and I was leadership in IT, and said, I want you to help me start an Out at Broad group. And so we started one, and then we publicized it. And it was something that you're able to potentially, if not bring up in an interview, it's there on the website. We marched in pride. And we made a point of living what we thought we ought to be living and encouraging other employees to join the group. And I think that sends a better message than trying to work out first thing that I would say do as a hiring manager is when you're doing team interviews or multiple people, make sure there are women, make sure there are people of color, make sure that you represent your existing diversity on your hiring team. And if you don't have it, I probably don't want to work with you. So I'm kind of with Peter, but I'm in kind of a you place, and I know a lot of people aren't. And it's tricky. As a hiring manager, I think you have to live the dream. So it's like, don't take off your badge or button or whatever it is. Don't dye your hair brown again. Just be yourself in the interview and hope that it communicates. But I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable if I were being interviewed and somebody spent a bunch of time telling me about how diverse they were. I'm like, well, this isn't really anything to do with the job, except I do want to know this, but why are you telling me? It should just be reflected in how the company is.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Let me add something. I think in this
Yeah.
question specifically is, as a hiring manager, how do we also ensure that we're hiring someone that is diverse, that is inclusive, right? Because we may be talking to candidates that, and let's call it what it is, they just want a job, but they're not willing to deal with their co-worker that is in the community, or that have a different behavior with women, which I've seen, right? That's, I think, where this question is bringing light.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about when we're talking to the candidates, but if I want to hire someone, how do I ask the question to see how your mentality is coming into a culture, for example, that I'm building to be diverse?
The way
nice
I do it
point.
is I have really long interview before I present somebody. So before I give somebody to a candidate, they've gone through a half an hour with Laura Maria. They've gone through 15 minutes with me to decide if I want to do the next one. And then I do a 2-hour interview. And in that interview, there's conversation. It's not a stress test, but it's long enough that the bad attitudes will come out. Because after a period of time, people start to like let their guard down. I get to know who they are. Now, outside the United States, we also talk about family, kids, stuff like that, because that's part of what you do. And the other thing is, like, I'm known as queer and like a bit obsessed with this stuff, and so people feel comfortable when they come to me. So as a hiring manager, I set the stage. As a potential employee or contractor, I do research. I investigate them. So we all have to do our homework, and none of us should be confining our research and analysis to the interview in the same way that a resume can be really terrible, but the candidate's great. The LinkedIn can be lousy, makes it really hard to find. Have a good LinkedIn. Call me. You have one advice. It's the person we want to know. It's like how are we going to be between the meetings? And that requires some time.
Yeah. Well, and I would say do your own, as a hiring manager or as a candidate, do your own background checks on the company. Find people that know people that work there and ask them if they're prepared to talk about the company culture.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had candidates where they were great and they did a wonderful interview and we did a secret background check and somebody basically said, this person is nasty and horrible, don't hire them. And it was nothing to do with their ability to do the job. And it was everything to do with how disruptive they were to the team. And we didn't hire them. We hired someone else who was slightly less skilled. So, people live their lives and they live themselves. And especially with social media and even on LinkedIn, you can find people that know, you can do some OSINT on a company or a person and decide whether or not they're going to be disruptive to your team. And disruptive can mean being bigoted and nasty and a lot of other things. So do the research. I second Peter again. I think I'm agreeing with him too much this week.
Well,
if
you're not eager to do the research, why are you in cyber? Like, we love this stuff.
Exactly.
One of the topics I want to take on maybe next week is I want to describe what cybersecurity people are like. We talked a lot about how queer people are, but what about cyber people? Who are we? And one of the things is, like, if you like, this is one of the reasons I love hanging out with Ray. Like, Ray is great at OSINT. Great, she's terrific at research because she loves it. I love it, right? She's better at it than I am. Let's go to slide number 4 because I think we hit 3 already. Do we jump to 2 slides?
We totally can. And the one thing I also want to call out is I think slide 4 corresponds really well to some of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So
this was great.
Yeah.
Hey, Ray, could you read this for us? Because I don't have my glasses.
We have to lip read, apparently.
Wait, Ray, you're muted.
Ray.
You're muted, my dear.
The screen, I'm sorry. Wow, look at that.
You're okay.
And now for my profound statement before I step on the moon. What questions would a candidate like to be asked to demonstrate self-awareness? is self-awareness a basic soft skill?
I once had a boss tell me,
yes.
you know, you need to be more self-aware. He's not, scratch that. You're too self-aware. I'm like, that's because I'm onto you and you know it. And like about a month later, I was gone.
So do we feel like self-awareness is like a defense mechanism sometimes?
Well, self-awareness is complex, right?
Yeah. Well, it sounded like for you,
yeah,
you were self-metering, you were self-monitoring, you were being really self-aware of everything that you did because you could sense that you were in a hostile situation.
I have a personal example of that from many, many years ago.
Sure.
Where I was interviewing at a company for a position, and I got the company talked a lot about, we didn't call it DEI then, but they talked a lot about diversity. And I got this weird feeling that the guy was like semi-interviewing me to make sure that I was normal. So when it got to the what questions do you have, I asked my favorite question. What are the things you most dislike about working at this company? And got a 20-minute rant about the diversity program. So I walked out of the interview. I called the recruiter who had sent me, and she's like, oh, I have a phone number for you. Here's the number of the head of HR at that company. So I called them and left a message about what had happened and said, clearly I'm not going to be continuing to interview for this job. And like 5 minutes later, her assistant called me back. And 5 minutes after that, she called me back. And I'm like, I'm going to be filing a report with the Mass Commission Against Discrimination about this. And she's like, I'll call you back and let you know what happened. And actually the guy got fired because he had violated not just the diversity policy, but he shouldn't even have been interviewing me because he hadn't been through interview training, and he was a contractor, and this, and this, and this. And I was like, well, I didn't actually want this guy to lose his job. I just wanted him to get slapped upside the head a bit. But it's sometimes worth speaking. Yes, quite a bit. But sometimes it's worth speaking out, even though I felt really uncomfortable. I mean, I was in my 20s. I was aware of this company pitching diversity, but I don't read gay. Well, I do read gay, but back then, I went into an interview trying not to read gay because I was young and stupid, and I still got that. So, and actually, I don't think he'd have ranted if I had read more gay. So actually, in that sense, I guess it was a good thing that I didn't read gay to him. But it was an experience that changed my life because it changed the way I approached interviews. And it started me thinking that secret message you think you're hearing might actually be there. And, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I have a lot of issues with conspiracy theories, but sometimes there is actually a conspiracy.
The vibe check is a thing. The vibe check is a thing. And I think, especially in cyber, the vibe check is really a thing. And I feel like, some of the questions I see around stuff like this for self-awareness are the really basic ones that we run into, like, tell me about a time that you negotiated a difficult situation. Like, those are self-awareness questions. Like, because really what they're asking us is, do you have the self-awareness to realize that somebody was being difficult with you? And were you able to actually negotiate that and deal with those choppy waters? So, just to talk about some of those basic questions. And I'm curious, any of us who have done any type of hiring, like what versions of that question have we asked to figure out, like, do people have a clue about being able to remediate, negotiate with people, work with people, and express that self-awareness? Because I think it is a really essential soft skill for, working with other humans. If you're not self-aware, then you're going to make everybody else around you probably kind of miserable.
Go ahead.
I use a way of understanding people, and I follow this to the core. There's two types of people in the world. One, you offer gum, they're going to chew it and go about their day. And the second one, they're going to ask you, why does my breath stink? And those are the people that are very self-aware, right? Because they're going to say, oh my gosh, they're offering me gum because, right, there's something more possibly. And it is valid in absolutely every little corner of the world. And when we're doing interviews and when we're talking with candidates, it's so important to ask. For me, one of the small questions that gives me that self-awareness is, hey, why are you interested in this role, right? We all know that we can always answer because I need the money. Like, we need the money, right? I know I can answer that myself. But are you self-aware to get through the interview and tell me, what did you find valuable of the job posting? What could you possibly be interested in for working for a specific company? And what skills can you bring that are valuable for me to consider you as an additional candidate, right? There's three things that can be targeted once that question is asked, and that's going to talk about your self-awareness. I asked someone once upon a time, are you interested in this role? And their answer was, because it's in Texas. You can also do that role.
That's fair.
Right. I mean, is that self-awareness? You can also work at an HEB because it's in Texas, right? Like, we're talking about, we're in cybersecurity. Do we have that self-awareness? Do we have the self-awareness to deal with other team members that are outside of our group? Because again, soft skills are so important to build rapport, to have communication, and to convey the information that we want, right? And for me, the basic question is, why are you interested in that role? So I can understand how you process that question and how you're going to bring value into answering that.
I'll add my favorite question, which is, talk about a time that you had to resolve a problem with a team member.
There you go. Easy peasy.
That ain't bad. Yeah.
Because I'm all about the team. I think as a manager, your job is not to do the work, and it shouldn't be to do the work. Your job is to facilitate everyone else doing the work, which means you need a team dynamic that works. You need team members that will speak up, either privately or publicly, to you about what you're screwing up and about what the team is doing or screwing up.
Yeah.
And those are important to me. So small companies, the managers often have to do the work as well. This comes back to the Peter principle, which I seem to be mentioning like twice a week at the moment, which, message me somewhere. I'll send you the Wikipedia link. Peter as in not this Peter, but
not this Peter.
I haven't got a single residual check.
Level of competence, because you get to a point where to be paid more, you have to be a manager. And generally, individual contributors make really lousy managers, especially when you don't train them. And the reason is that a manager is a facilitator, not a doer. They smooth out the lumps. They set strategy, and in my mind. And if you're a big enough company to do that, you should be thinking very carefully about promoting your star engineer into management. Just give him the extra money. In one of the companies I worked at, we called them fellows, and they got on a track with everybody else. If you're a manager, you should be really worried about about team coherence. And that doesn't mean hire everyone the same as you. That will be coherent, and it will suck.
Yeah, some places have done like principal or like they're figuring it out. Like
Let's hope.
Yeah,
but I think
I talked
should be doing that too.
I talked to a company recently that they had published pay bands. When they gave you their benefits package, they actually gave you, this is each level of employee here, and these are the pay bands. Mm-hmm. If you so it kind of showed you like, yes, you may differ slightly from someone else with the same title as you, but this is by how much. And they had the managerial route, and they also had like the principal, fellow, staff. Staff's another one that people will say. I know Sonos does staff engineers, but yeah, that are individual contributors. But do we feel like we're good on this question? Peter, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Or
let's go to the next one, because I want to save your voice from your allergies.
I know. I can't help it. Speaking of needing to facilitate, like
you're good. You're good at it. So
you are
whatever.
So
let's go to actually one last thing on the question thing.
Yeah.
In Discord, I have a group that is exclusively for SOC managers where I'm sharing all of my interview questions and explaining what they're about. So if you're a SOC manager, only SOC managers, get in touch with me. I can't give it away to everybody because then it spoils the interview. But maybe someday. But talk to people about these things for sure. If you are looking for a job, and most people who are going to be watching this are looking for jobs, do the research and show up with your own questions. Don't leave it to the hiring managers. Hiring managers are not trained on this stuff, and recruiters don't know security. You're the expert on you. You know you better than anybody else has ever known you or ever will know you. Show up with your own thoughts and opinions and ideas. Let's go to the next one.
Awesome. No, that's great. I put together the slide for this question, and I kind of realized after the fact and looking at it that it sort of answers itself, doesn't it?
While not making your authentic self a liability in the situation, maybe.
Yeah, because I think that being your authentic self does help you stand out from the crowd, but that's a great point.
Yeah, I can't go into a job and be all of me in front of a bunch of people. Nobody wants to see all of me at work. There's a work version of me, I work. I develop that and I tune it, and then there's the home version of me, and then there's the one you might see of me at a certain kind of bar, right? Not the same me or coffee shop.
Well, we're all chameleons, aren't we? I mean, we all have different. I'm a different self with my mother on the phone than I am. Well, actually, she's the only person I talk to on the phone. But it's like we're different selves with different people. So, if Amber and I get on a call, just us, we're different selves than Amber and I are on here. And then Amber and I would be if we were talking to the President of the United States. Or the Queen. Well, sorry, there isn't one of that. Well, there is one in Denmark.
There are so many queens.
They're
not paid that well.
So
and if I'm talking to a queen, it's wholly different.
if we're talking about being authentic, right? It touches back on the conversation we previously had. Do I want to be my authentic self as a member of the LGBTQ community without being a liability? I think the answer is yes, right? Not all the time, and we discussed this. If I'm in the position where I want to feel welcome and I can choose, then I want to be accepted as part of the community, because otherwise I may not be wanting to work for that company, right? But at the same time, let's think how that authentic side comes into cyber. You guys mentioned it, right? Or you all mentioned it, right? Ray, great at OSINT, right? Bring that and say, I had to do my open source intelligence due to me getting to know my community and understanding where I'm safe. It's valid, right? Because now you're putting your life into your value that you can bring in the professional world, right? When I'm talking about myself, I do have to acknowledge that being a minority and being a woman is very difficult in coming from Mexico, right? Because I always have to be looking as to who's whistling behind me just because I have a crop top, or I don't wear crop tops, but whatever the case, right? So that's how we choose how to stand from the crowd. We talked about it in the episode. Our mindset is completely different from a lot of people because we have to learn how to read the room. We have to do open source intelligence. We have to bring those talents into cyber. But not only that, any person, if they're capable of being self-aware of how their traits as a teacher, as a customer service provider, as a bagger at HEB, right? Can they bring their value into cyber and explain to me why their organizational skills in classrooms, in conflict management with parents is valuable into cyber? That's what's going to make you stand out from the crowd, right? And I think those are the things that we want to make sure that people know. Tell me, how do you stand out, and why do you make that self-awareness statement about you that makes me want to continue this working relationship?
Well, is my authentic self valuable, and in what ways? Is it commercially valuable? Is there something about my authentic self that would be an asset? Do I know what those things are? Right. We tend to think of self-awareness as about emotional intelligence and awareness of the body and breathing and stress and like, can I handle myself under a pressure situation? Can I deal with people who aren't like me? Right. But it's also about understanding like what I'm going to bring to bear and what's not valuable. Right. One's liabilities should not be paraded across the desk in an interview, right? That's for you to figure out, deal with it. But there are things that I bring as a queer person, like in a mixed race marriage, who, you know, blah blah blah, that gives me certain insights and capabilities. Like I know how to read a room really well. I know how to handle certain kinds of conflicts that other people can't. What I can't do is change my face. If like somebody makes no sense or is being an idiot, they see it. I've been told like, turn your camera off. I'm like, okay. But on the positive side, people tend to trust me because they know that I can't bullshit. I'm not capable of it really. I'll try.
Can we play poker for money?
No, God no. Absolutely not. And you know I don't have any anyway. Ray, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this one? Let's not. We won't. You and I could play poker, but I think you may be the only one I could beat.
Don't forget to turn your mic on.
Well, it's kind of. I'm sitting here thinking about, you know, the fact of, you know, you're saying parading things across the desk, but sometimes that OSINT mind has to go into gear because, and it's kind of like, it kind of like reminds me, like on LinkedIn, you know, put hashtag this, Instagram, hashtag this, all keywords. And you have to watch out for the keywords because certain keywords and connotations lead to stereotypes. And being a trans person that did not transition until much later in life, after I've got, you know, 4 kids, the word that comes to my mind, being cynical toward myself anyway, but is deception. If there ever was a freaking non-robotic Decepticon, it was me. Because I did the military thing. Big, you know, tough guys with, you know, camoed faces, running around in the woods, doing crazy stuff. I was nuts. Go to parties, dare me to do something, I'll do it. But that was all deception. None of that was real. So I kind of think it's like
the story of how you met your wife. It tells me you have loads of courage and a lot of heart. I love that story. I'm not saying we're going to do it now, but yeah. Like I, you know, I'm doing this in part because your courage inspired me, and being willing to remove your mask was an act of incredible courage and strength. And together, we don't have to be strong and courageous. How about we do one more? Because we're almost out of time. We have like 7 minutes left, and I just dropped the mic. Sorry. How can I stand? Oh no, can we go to the next slide, Amber?
Yeah, sure. And I think this is a great one.
Hey, Amber, who doesn't have a voice left? Could you read this one?
If networking is the best job search strategy, what advantages do we have as members of the queer cyber community? And I'm going to add to this and say, also, what obligations or responsibilities do we have as members of the queer cyber community?
So I'm going to be non-PC, I think, and say, well, it's the gay mafia. I mean, seriously, I network, you know, I network with my gay, lesbian, and trans friends. It's like if I have a job that somebody has sent me, I post it on specifically gay forums first, and then I count to 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. Sometimes, you know, I think, you know, we're all part of different networks. So all of us are part of a little network of people who make queer in cyber. But we're all part of networks, and you network with people you have a commonality with. and we have commonality, or we should have commonality with other people in the queer community. And so you should be saying to your friends, even if they're not in cyber, I'm looking for a job right now. If you know anyone who's hiring who isn't an idiot, please let me know. And that's what networking is all about. You're trying to find commonality, and we have commonality with each other.
I love it. How about we end
That
it
was
there?
an actual mic drop, by
I
the
think
way.
that was
feel
yeah.
like
I think
was it.
that was great. And we all have things we need to get to in 6.5 minutes, and we need to wrap this up and upload it. So I'm gonna close it here, unless there's like a burning desire to contribute.
I think the only thing I had to say about this was being willing to connect with people that are clearly flying the flag, but like you may not know and aren't directly beneficial to you.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of times when we're on LinkedIn, we're looking at who's trying to connect with us, and they're, maybe they're very junior in their career, or they're not in a career adjacent to you or what you're interested in right now, but they are clearly also in your community. And
you never know when they'll be able to help you. You have to help other people, so they'll help you.
But I think you need to be willing to help other people without that expectation that they're going to be able to help you in the future.
Not a quick
but let's remember that it's not an expectation also to help, right? Because we have to understand that there are advantages and strategies for us to network and reach out to people. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when people reach out to us, at least in my behalf, I want that self-awareness that you are focused, that you are driven, and that you truly want to work with the help. And not just reach out and say, hey, Anna, how do I get to become you? And having that expectation that I'm going to give you absolutely every single step that I took to get to where I am, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So you won't, somebody comes, this actually happened last night. Somebody came to me, he's from somebody in, I don't know, someplace in Europe or whatever. He's like, will you give me a referral for a job? And I said, I don't know you. Well, let's spend time on the phone. I said, you come to my Discord, you participate, you come to events, then I might invest time in you, because my time's money. Your time is money. I will invest in you if I think that it's worthwhile, because there are a lot of dumb queer people.
But not only that, our name is our name. Our name is our pride.
Yeah,
and we're putting our name in the line to refer someone, to recommend someone, right? It's different recommending and referring someone versus just saying, hey, there's this opportunity here, go and apply. And you're right, Peter. I had
we're not all
a fun experience. No,
I was going to say, let's run that out and just say there's a lot of dumb people. Like we don't even need to qualify.
Yeah, well, exactly. But this is in our community. Like we're as diverse within the community as outside the community. I think what all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us have committed to is investing time and our et cetera within it, right? Because we need each other. And so we created this podcast YouTube channel. We have conversations going on in Discord. I promise we will get together someday in person and expand this. Ultimately, what we're going to do is build power for the community and in turn for ourselves. But that requires that we take a hard look at the way we do things and how we approach the world, how we approach business. This is really a business project. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, Amber, for suffering through your allergies. Thanks, Anna, for coming. Ray, thank you for just inspiring all of us. And Ian, insights like the day is long. And with that, a couple of announcements. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks. We're going to look for a sponsor to pay for production costs, because video hosting of a podcast is spendy, and we want to keep doing the video. If you want to know more, hit me up for an invitation to the Discord. Lots of other nearshore cyber stuff, and I won't bore you with that now. We'll bore you in completely different ways. Let's shut this down. Thanks, everybody. See you in a couple weeks.
All right, thanks, Peter. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.